let's talk about Open Windows. Much like The Den, this really flew under the radar as far as movies go. This stars Elijah Wood as a man who gains access to his fave's computer. The funny thing is, when I first put this on, the very first scene is of I would call it a horror fantasy type movie. It kind of reminded me of the horror fantasy movies that come out of Russia. Except this one, I believe, is out of Spain, and it was called Dark Sky, I believe. And when this first came on, I thought that they had uploaded the wrong movie. Because I first started watching this on Shudder, and I was like, well, this is not the right Open Windows, because this is some other movie. So I turned it off, and then I went on Amazon Prime, because it was free to watch there. And the same thing happened, and I said, well, let me watch this movie, because maybe it'll be interesting. And it was Open Windows. It turns out that the character had been watching a trailer for a horror fantasy during, I would say, this movie's version of a Comic-Con. I mentioned that the main character is played by Elijah Wood. His character's name is Nick, but it should be Stan, because that's exactly what he is. He is a stan for this fictional actress, and he runs pretty much like a fan site in her honor. By the way, the actress's name in this movie is Jill Goddard, or Goddard. I prefer Goddard. Anyway, Nick is contacted by a super stan who gives him even more access to things like the actress's cell phone. And one might think that that's unrealistic, but it actually is very realistic, because as I recall, a few years ago, there was a bunch of actresses that had their phones hacked and their nudes leaked, and I believe it was referred to as the fappening. So then together, Nick and Super Stan stalk this actress at the same time. At first I was a little bit annoyed how the camera kept zooming into the different windows on Nick's computer as he's paying attention to them, but then this movie is called Open Windows, and after a while I just got used to it. Out of all the movies like this that I saw, I think this is the only one that actually takes place on a PC laptop instead of a MacBook. What stands out about this movie is that it's way more voyeuristic than the others that are like it. He goes down a really bad rabbit hole of fuckery at the direction of the super stan. Then eventually he gets manipulated and blackmailed into doing some really wild stuff. I thought one plot hole would be that the super stan keeps telling him that he can't let anyone see him do these things, but he's in a hotel doing these things and there's video cameras everywhere, or hotel surveillance cameras everywhere. So I thought that would be a plot hole, but then it's shown that the super stan has access to all these cameras, and he can manipulate them and probably rewind, erase, or do whatever he wants to them. And remember how I said the super stan was able to hack the actress's phone? Well, he goes back and does this and turns her camera on without her knowledge. That stood out to me because there's a lot of people who have that fear in real life. And I mean, you've seen these people when you go into a coffee shop and you see the person sitting there and they have like a little piece of tape over the camera on their laptop. It's because they have that fear of someone turning on their webcam and watching them without their knowledge. I thought about that for a minute. Like when I was in grad school, I saw people do that, and for a minute I thought about taping mine up, and then I remembered, well, what would they see? They would see me chewing gum and typing. That'd be the most boring. Like if someone were to turn on my webcam, it would be the most boring thing. Maybe they'll see me scratching my nose or something. There's nothing to see. And I don't keep my laptop open when I'm not using it. So it's not like they could just look at me doing stuff in my room, because I close my laptop when I'm not using it. There's another scene that kind of took me out of the movie, and that's when Super Stan is telling Nick to send this file to the actress or else he's going to hurt the actress. And there's a shot of the Super Stan supposedly in the house with the actress, and he's got a knife in his hand. But if he was giving these directions verbally, which he did, he was giving these directions verbally to Nick, how could the actress not hear him giving these directions verbally, because she was less than maybe 6 or 7 feet away from her? That part kind of didn't make sense unless you had, you know, a group of people working together. Or that should have tipped Nick off that maybe Stan was not, or Super Stan as I called him, was not working alone. And then I started thinking, well, what if, because of that issue that didn't make sense, that Stan didn't exist at all? What if this is all in Nick's mind and Nick is Stan? That was my thought process at this point in the movie. Is it all in his head, or is this really happening? You'll have to actually watch the movie to find out, because I'm not going to tell you. The acting in this was pretty good, but when has Elijah Wood not delivered a good performance? I mean, since he was like a little big-eyed little boy in The Good Son, he's always been a good actor. And then Daniel Radcliffe rode in trying to steal his thunder. I can't be the only person that compares the two of them. There's a little bit of violence in this, but no blood or gore. The soundtrack was very cinematic, and that kind of took me out of the moment too, because if you're presenting this as a webcam found footage, to put a complete orchestral cinematic score behind it really takes you out of the moment. Another thing that takes you out, like I said in The Den, where they use regular cinematic cameras and then repurpose the footage as found footage, this does that too. You have scenes that are supposed to be with a dash cam, and some that's supposed to be with a laptop webcam, and it looks too crisp, and they needed to go back and do something about it and make it look more like a webcam and like a dash cam real footage. I feel like these scenes would have been so much better if the director actually used a real webcam and a real dash cam. Like, why not? If you're a director, you're directing found footage, shoot it like you're really making found footage. Why would you even waste the time using a big old, regular movie camera to film dash cam footage when you can just use a dash cam to film dash cam footage? I think probably the only barrier would be the amount of time that you shoot for and how much memory space would be needed. But then that might just make you improve your directing, because I feel like if you need to shoot a scene 150 times, then there's something either wrong in your direction or there's something wrong with the actors. But that's so unnecessary. But like I said in my review of The Den, they could have just adjusted this footage in post also to make it look like it was dash cam or make it look like it was webcam. I got a little bit sleepy watching this towards the last third, and I was watching it at 2:30 in the afternoon, so there's no reason for me to be sleepy except for that it was getting a little bit draggy. Then it switches from Nick's perspective to the perspective of the Super Stan and his head mount camera. At that point, there was a big reveal, and that kind of woke me back up. There was also some pyrotechnics that looked really good. I forgot to mention that. For me, this wasn't as interesting as The Den or the movie that I'm about to talk about called Searching, but it wasn't bad either. If I paid to see this in a movie theater, I would be a little bit let down, but since I saw it for free, I feel like my expectations were met. I'll be back in a moment to talk about Searching. Before I get started, let me give a shout out to Dominic. Thank you for suggesting Searching. I was going to watch it anyways because John Cho is bae. At least he was when he was in Harold and Kumar. I thought he was really cute then. He looks super dad-ish in this movie. And he really did a great job in the Exorcist TV series. Straight away, this movie opens with a computer turning on. And once again, it's a Mac. Always, right? Well, not always, because as we just saw in Open Windows, I was the only one that it was done on a PC, but all the others has been a Mac, so it's just a thing that I noticed. Not saying that one is better than the other, because they each have their merits. It just depends on what you want. I hate when people do that whole Mac versus PC versus Linux argument, and I don't like the whole iPhone versus Android argument, because that's like if we sat here all day and argued over whether Mitsubishis were better than Subarus or whether Volvos were better than Mercedes. It's all a personal choice. It's a personal preference. Whatever you like, you like. So like what you like and don't, diss other people for liking what they like. And that concludes my TED Talk on how not to be an asshole. So anyways, I was saying about the movie opening with the computer, and it's kind of like a walk down memory lane, because you see some of the older apps, you see how things used to look on Google, and I think there was a Microsoft, an older Microsoft Paint or something like that as well. There was just all these, it was kind of, a walk down, like I said, a walk down memory lane of how computing used to look, 15 years ago, because the prologue tells us the story of this family through the computer, through their messages to each other, through their photographs, through them first creating social media profiles, like when Facebook first popped up, when YouTube first became a thing. So that was really cool to see. Really, the intro of this movie is a masterclass on that film guideline of show, don't tell. And if you've seen this movie, you already know what I'm going to say about all those files on a desktop. My pet peeve. It almost gave me anxiety, the amount of files that he had just sitting on his desktop. But then I realized that it speaks to his mental state at the time. And so if you've seen the trailer, you know that this is about a father whose daughter goes missing, and he has to use the computer to try to unravel the mystery of her disappearance. His first mistake was when he FaceTimed her, and she was supposedly at a friend's house for study group, and he asked her which friend, and she says, "A new friend, you don't know them." Maybe my parents were stricter, but I couldn't go over to people's houses that they didn't know. And as a younger teenager, they would have to know the parents too. Like, if I said, "Oh, can I go to my friend's house?" What does her mom say? "Call on the phone, I want to speak to the mother." Ended up working out because, me being from a little bit of a small town, the parents got to know each other and ended up hanging out with each other anyways. But on the negative side of that, you couldn't get away with a whole lot because our parents hung out together and knew each other. So anyways, that was his first mistake. This is a solid mystery thriller, and different aspects of the story are unfolded, or they are peeled off like layers of an onion. I really liked how the story unfolds, especially the part that shows how phony some people can be for internet clout. The daughter, Margot, really had no friends at school. Some people did use her as a tutor, but weren't super friendly to her, even to the point where she ate lunch alone daily. Shout out to the people who've had to deal with that or are currently dealing with that. I went through that myself. I remember first day of school of 7th grade, I got to the cafeteria a little bit early because I guess the teacher let us out early. And I figured, well, if I sit down at this table, someone will eventually come by and sit with me. But no one did. And that happened for about a week straight. So then I just started having my lunch in the library because I didn't want to deal with, because not only is eating alone one thing, then you have the people at other tables all looking at you and whispering, going, "Psh, look at that girl over there eating by herself." So I went to the library and actually met 2 friends in there who were also having their lunch in the library for almost the same reason. One of them I'm still friends with to this day. That's also when I got into reading Stephen King novels because the library was full of them. I do want to add for my younger viewers, if you're going through that, it can be tough, but don't worry, it's only a moment in time that will pass. And on the bright side, one of the girls that was whispering and getting her giggles off at me sitting by myself was arrested a couple of years ago for leaving her baby in a car in the middle of the winter. Back to the movie. Anyways, when Margot comes up missing, these same people who couldn't be bothered to even truly be her friend were making YouTube videos of themselves crying and calling themselves her best friend. Just trifling. I have no segue between that and this, so I'll just move on. Parts of the father's search kind of reminded me of the same methods that Neve and Max use on Catfish. I like how not every scene was completely visual. Like, there was some parts where we just hear the audio of phone calls because it's kind of unrealistic that everyone would be talking to each other on video chat. That's just not realistic right now. Maybe 10 years into the future that'll be the norm, but right now it's like 50-50. I mean, I usually call my mother on video chat. Sometimes I call my sister on video chat, but I think for the most part we still text a lot more than anything. Want to know what was super cute in this movie? Or I don't know if I'm describing this accurately, or maybe I shouldn't call it cute. There was something really cool in this movie, and that was how they did a little bit of a nod to Unfriended. When the father goes on to Facebook, one of the Facebook profiles says Laura Barnes. The acting in this is really good. There are no weak links. There's a detective played by Deborah Messing. She's usually good. John Cho is always good. The young lady who played the daughter, Margot, I understand that this is her first acting role, and she did really well. The guy who played the father's brother, he did a great job, and he's really good looking. I wonder if he used to be, he gives me, I was a model that became an actor. I don't know whether I'm, reaching, but he looks like he could have been a model that became an actor. There's a reveal in this movie as well. In retrospect, there were hints all through the movie It's up to the individual whether you pick up on them or not. For me, the reveal was kind of surprising. And then I thought about some of the hints that were dropped earlier, and I thought, well, why didn't I think of that, when those hints were dropped? But your mileage may vary. I must say I really enjoyed Searching, and I actually watched it twice. And I mean, just to put it out there, while everyone's creaming their pants over Mandy, I think Searching was a better film. But that's just my opinion. And like I always say, just because I love something doesn't mean you won't hate it, and just because I hate something doesn't mean you won't love it. Did you see Open Windows or Searching or both? And what did you think of these movies? Let me know in the comments below. Bye.